So there's a lot of free themes, but most of the free themes are really great, except they're what called like global themes, and the idea is like they don't look that great out of the box. The idea is you're going to override them and like change things. So if you want something that looks pretty awesome, they have like premium themes too, which you pay for. They have a lot of like license restrictions and stuff. This stuff is open source, so like you can use it, you can change it, you can give it to your friend, you can use it on a million sites and never get an ad for it, which is really cool. But if you're like not quite sure, there are a lot of premium things. You can go like feed forest and things like that.
All right, I'm going to get started because it's time and I have a very full deck. Does someone mind closing that door for me? Close that door. You don't hear people. Fortunately, I don't have my clicker. I forgot it, so I'm going to stand up here. Otherwise, I'd be walking around the room because I like to do that. So this is the flexibility of Drupal 8. If you're just here previously for Jim's talk, I'm going to be talking about a whole different types of flexibility. Though what Jim talked about was really interesting. So the slides are up on bit.ly/nyc16flex. If you want them, they're slightly different than what I'm going to show. That's because if you're here, you get the full grand tour of everything. All right, a little bit about myself before we get started. I'm Mike Miles. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I've been working with Drupal since 2008. I've done everything, just content entry, site building, theming, module development, large-scale architecture for global platforms. I'm Acquia certified, and Acquia MVP, Grandmaster, all that jazz. I help run the Boston Drupal meetup, which meets the first Tuesday of every month if you're ever in Boston. It's a great group. Yeah, that's about me. That's my spiel. I work for a company called Genuine. I'm the associate director of PHP there. Genuine is not a Drupal shop, unlike a lot of companies that are sponsored, people speaking who work for Drupal shops. We're a full-service digital agency. Development's just a small part of what we do. So we have a whole brand team and strategy teams and UX and design and copywriting teams, a video team who does digital and traditional video, experiential department who does things like touch screens and 360-degree videos and little robotic things, which are really cool. I wish I knew how to do. And then the development department, we have our .NET team who does Sitecore and Rocco and stuff like that, which, enterprise stuff is good for some people. Then there's the front-end team who specialize in JavaScript frameworks, and then the PHP team that I help lead, which means 99% of the time we are doing Drupal. Genuine, really cool place to work for, really cool projects. We are hiring if you're interested. We have offices in San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and here in New York. And another interesting fact, we were just named the number 6 mid-size company best place to work in Boston. So that's really exciting. You want me to interrupt? Jim, can I use your clicker?
Yeah.
Excellent. Jim Birch, really smart guy. Everybody should check out the stuff at the Jim Birch on Twitter. Stand-up guy. Okay, that's enough about me. While Jim gets the clicker, I'm going to keep going. All right, flexibility. What do I mean by flexibility? The first couple times I gave a version of this presentation, I just let the word flexibility be what it is and what people assumed it meant. So I kept doing some research because I wanted to really figure out what did I mean when I said flexibility. And what does that mean in terms of Drupal? And so I did research, and by research I mean I went to Google and Wikipedia, and I actually looked up definitions for the word flexibility. Great afternoon. Cool. Let's see if this works. Yay. All right. So I found this paper titled Types of Flexibilities and Classification of Flexible Manufacturing Systems. There's your summer beach read, everybody. Actually, an interesting paper written for the University of Michigan in 1984 by their research department. And the authors, they were actually doing a case study, I think it was for Ford Motor Company, to determine for a bunch of their manufacturing systems, what's it mean for each one to be flexible. So they separated flexibility into 8 subtypes. And as I was reading through these types, one of the versions of it really struck out to me and struck a chord, and that was expansion flexibility, which was described as the capability of building a system and expanding it as needed easily and modularly. A lot of key terms in there, like easy, expanding as you need it, being modular, made me think, that's what makes Drupal flexible. And it's interesting that a term for a physical system from 1984 describes a digital system in 2016. Thought that was really interesting. So what makes Drupal flexible and why this expansion flexibility cover it? First part is that it's modular design. Drupal, since the onset, has had this idea around having modular components, individual pieces of functionality that are grouped together that can be swapped out, added, or removed to make Drupal do what you want. For the most part, in Drupal 8 and in previous versions of Drupal, the different systems are decoupled. They don't depend too much on each other. There's a separation between display, database, theming. They're tied together a little bit, but for the most part, they're decoupled. You don't have to know everything about one to be able to work in the other one. You can specialize. And then Drupal is open source by nature, which means if Drupal doesn't do what you want it to do, you have the ability to go in, mess with the code base, update it, expand it, change it to make it work for your needs. So these are the three aspects that I think make Drupal flexible: that it's modular, that the systems are decoupled, and that it's open source. Anyone can add to it, anyone can make changes to it. It's not a closed-off system. Now, why is this flexibility important? Well, when you are building a project and deciding to use Drupal, you want to be able to make Drupal do what you want. You want to be able to say, you want your clients or whomever you're building for to give you functionality requests or business needs, and that you can say, yes, Drupal can do that. And the answer is yes, Drupal can do that, no matter what it is. And because of its flexibility, there's no right way to do something in Drupal. There's just the right for me way. This is a phrase I've touted a lot in a bunch of my talks. I used to say there's no one way to skin the Drupal cat. It's all based on what you have in terms of skill sets, time, and budget that's available for your needs, or available to you, to determine how you're going to change something. So it's not that changing something on a theme level is the right way to make a style change. It could be that if you're more comfortable working in the GUI, the GUI interface, that you have a module that allows you to set CSS classes there and not use templates. And both of those methods are very valid in the right way. It's based on what you know how to do or your clients know how to do and what time and budget you have to implement those changes. And I think all the versions of flexibility within Drupal fall under three core areas. The first one is it's flexible in the interface. So this means you can use the interface provided by Drupal, the admin interface, to make changes, to expand and change your settings and make Drupal do what you want. You don't need to know any technical skills. You need a little Drupal knowledge. There's a learning curve to the admin interface. But once you have that, it's basically you're going in, clicking buttons, and making changes. There's making changes on the display layer, and the flexibility given you there by the theming engine and styling and CSS and JavaScript. If you know front-end technologies, you can make changes and alter Drupal to meet your needs based on just display items. And then there's the data layer, the server layer, where you're going to write a module, you're going to write PHP code, you're going to swap out whole core systems in Drupal 8 to change how Drupal works to make it flexible for your needs. So as a focus for the rest of this session, what I want to do is to prove the flexibility of Drupal. I'm going to treat this kind of like a science experiment, or a science thesis, I guess. I want to demonstrate the abilities of all types of skill sets to make Drupal do what you want, whether you are a developer, a non-developer, a front-end themer, a CSS person, someone who knows JavaScript, someone who knows PHP, someone who is a salesperson who's been tasked with changing something on your site. No matter what your skill set and your interactions with Drupal or your experience, you can make changes. And for each of the methods I'm going to outline as examples, I'm going to talk about some of the considerations and limitations of each one. So things you might think about if you decide that's how you're going to implement your functionality in Drupal. So to show all these things, I have a demo that I'm going to be showing. It's not live, because I'm a strong believer in Murphy's Law, that if you do live development, it is not going to work for you. So I have a bunch of GIFs and screenshots and code examples. I'm using a standard install profile for the latest version of Drupal 8. I just changed some of the colors using the Bartik built-in core theme. And what I'm going to do is change menu tabs using 8 different methods for 8 different skill sets. So we're going from a site that looks like this. You see the menu at the top, the main menu, that has all these nice little boring gray menu tabs. And by the end of this presentation, we'll get to something like this. that has this colorful array of altered menu tabs using 8 different methods. So why menu? Why am I going to demonstrate 8 ways to change menu tabs? It's very boring and not realistic. It's because menus is something everybody here is familiar with. Every website, every online application has navigation of some sort. So it's something we're all familiar with. I don't have to really use Drupalisms to explain it. And as well as, it turns out, the menu system goes through all the different layers in Drupal stack to be output and rendered. So it's really interesting. So let's get into some manipulation methods and improve the flexibility of Drupal. So let's assume I am someone who's not a developer. I don't know much about Drupal. So if I want to make changes, I'm going to use the Drupal core. And I like to refer to this as the clicking buttons method. Right? I'm going to log into the admin, I'm going to click a bunch of buttons, and I'm going to make changes and make Drupal do what I want for that. With this method, it's easy and quick. And I have these in quotes because quick means you know the Drupal admin interface. You know where to go to find things. You have to have that little bit of learning experience. And once you have that down, it's pretty quick to log in and make changes. And it's easy, again, because you're just logging in and you're basically clicking buttons and saving changes. Little to no dev skills are needed. You don't have to know what a module is in Drupal. You don't have to know how to write a theme or a template. You just have to know how to log into the admin and click around. But the capabilities are limited. You can only do what the admin interface allows you to do. So think of things, any electronic device we have, from your smartphone, your smart TV, your laptop, you can go into the configuration settings and you can change a whole bunch of changes, right? You can change a whole bunch of things, but you're limited to what options you're given. Whereas if you're a developer, if you don't like the options that are there, you can go write your own and add them to the system. So in terms of using the core UI as a non-developer to change a menu tab, I log in as the admin, and I click edit this menu. I can go to edit it. Then I go and I can edit my menu link. So the core UI lets me change the title, so I can add the word alt to the end of this menu link. I can change the location it points to, what page it goes to. I can save these changes, and very quickly and easily, my first menu tab, or my second one after home, it's been changed, it's been altered to meet my needs. Right? It says core alt, and before it said core. I logged in real quickly, real easily, made those changes and saved them, and they're presented to my user right away, which is another good aspect of this, depending on your caching setup. It's a very simple introduction. Let's say I wanted to change a little bit more. All I could do was change the title. I want to make it look different. That's where things like modules come into play to help with the flexibility of Drupal. So modules, as I said, they are a core part of Drupal, and I like to think of using modules as the extend core method, because that's what modules do. They extend the core capabilities of Drupal and what Drupal provides in terms of functionality. Now, using modules requires time for research. You have to find a module that meets the needs you're trying to accomplish. You have to be able to articulate what you're trying to do in a way that either you can ask a question to the community or you can do a search and find a module. Then if you can't find a module, though, since Drupal's open source, if you have a developer module skill set available to you, you can build your own. Which means it really opens up the door that if the core doesn't do something and you have a dev team member or you're a developer and you can't find a module that does what you need, you can build one that does what you need. Or you can have someone build one for you, which then adds to the admin interface that you can then use. However, I will caveat that with over 30,000 modules available in Drupal on the community, you'll probably find a module that meets your needs. For Drupal 8, you'll probably find a beta one, so it's up to you if you want to use it or not. The caveat of using modules is that they require long-term maintenance, both if you write your own and you use contrib ones. If you use contrib modules, you need to make sure you stay up with security updates. You're using code that someone you don't know wrote. Hopefully, you're using one that a lot of the community is using and it has an active issue queue, so they're finding problems with it. But you have to keep on top of that. If you're not using a provider like Acquia who just provides security updates for you, you have to make sure you're applying those updates and keeping track of them. Then if you're writing your own module, no one is testing that module for you. No one is finding the security holes, so you have to be diligent with that yourself and make sure you work out time for testing. So those are considerations to take if you want to use a module to change Drupal to fit your needs. Now back at our demo, I'm still someone who doesn't know much development skills, and I want to change a menu tab to change the display. I do some searching, and I find there's a Drupal 8 module called menu link attributes, which allows me to add additional HTML attributes to a menu tab. Cool. So I'm going to download the zip file. I know enough to put it in my modules directory. And I'm going to go to my Drupal admin. I'm going to click extend. I'm going to search for the module name. There it is, menu link attributes. I will enable it. Great, it's been installed. Now I can go back to my main menu and I can edit it. I can go and edit my modules link. I can set the title using core. But then I have a new place in the interface called attributes where I can set a class and a target, or I can go and configure this. And this module allows me to add additional attributes. Now, I am not a developer, so this looks very scary to me because it looks like code of some sort. It's called YAML. Is that YAML? I don't know. Oh, the developer told me YAML. That's what it's called. But I know enough where I feel like I could copy what lines 2, 3, and 4 are doing for setting that class attribute, and I'm going to copy and paste it to lines 11, 12, and 13. I'm going to set a style attribute with a blank label and blank description. So I'll make these changes, and I'll save that configuration, and I'll go edit my menu, edit the tab. I'll set the title again, because I didn't save it last time. And now in the attribute section, I have a new field called style where I copied and pasted something I think changes the background color and the text color using CSS. So I'll save those changes, and now my menu tab used Drupal core to alter the title, to add alt to it, and then it used a module to extend Drupal core so I could change the background. Notice I didn't have to know how to write a field in Drupal or how to save stuff to the database. I just needed to know enough to update that YAML file in this instance. But very little dev skill needed to extend Drupal to make it do what I want. It was flexible enough to let me do that. Now, if I wanted to change the display of a menu tab, and I am a little more technical minded, let's move into I'm a front-end developer. So I know a thing about theming and CSS and JavaScript. One of the methods of flexibility in Drupal is the templating engine. And in Drupal 8, that is Twig. Before previous versions of Drupal, we had PHP template, been ripped out, replaced with Twig, which we inherited from Symfony. It's really fun. And I think of altering data with templates is the alter markup method. So that's what you're doing. You're changing the HTML markup that is presented to the browser and displayed to users. Well, it's not displayed to users, it's presented to the browser. Great thing in Drupal is almost everything is templated. Anything that you see on your page goes through some sort of HTML template. Now, it may be not on the right level you want. It may be nested in the middle of a for loop in a Twig template, but it's there, so it's accessible as someone who knows about front-end templating. Now, you have to have the skill set if you're going to make changes on the template level. You have to know HTML and/or Twig, or you can try to figure out Twig. It's not that difficult. It's pretty easy to understand. But you at least need to know how to alter HTML so you can make your changes. But to use custom templates, you need a custom theme. The good news is if you are building a production Drupal site, you are probably already going to have a custom theme. You're not just going to build one that looks like a Drupal site. You're going to make it look like whatever your crazy design your designers gave you. So if you already have a custom theme and you need to make a quick change and you just have to alter the markup, you can probably do it in a template. Now it's cool in Drupal 8. So I'm a front-end developer and I want to change the markup in a menu tab using a template. In Drupal 8, I can turn on theme debug or Twig debug. And it's been backported to Drupal 7 as well. It's a configuration setting change. So when I inspect an element using my inspector, it gives me all these HTML comments to tell me how this element is being templated and where it's being output, which is really helpful because way before this, in Drupal 7, before Drupal 8 came along, you had to have some deep knowledge or a lot of time on your hands to find out what template is being used to output something. So here, in this example, I'm expecting on line 11, in inspecting the twig tab in my main menu, and I see from on line 7 that the whole menu is output in this template file that's located in core, themes, classy, templates, navigation, menu, .html.twig. And above that, from lines 3, 4, and 5, it's telling me Drupal, when it goes to render this menu, first it's going to look for a file called menu-main.html.twig. If it doesn't find that, it's going to look for a file called menu.html.twig, which it found in the classy theme it's using as indicated by the X. So I can overwrite this with my own template, and I can make changes using nothing but HTML and Twig. So to do this, I need a custom theme. So for this demo, we're going to create the Flex theme in our themes folder. It has an info file, and it has the one template file in our templates directory, which I've copied that existing Twig file from classy, and I just pasted it in here and renamed it based on what Drupal is looking for. So now I can edit this Twig file, and I'll see that it's not just for a single list item, it's for the whole main menu. So it has all these loops, and it's looping through items, but I can read through that and see that on lines, starting line 6, it's printing out a list item for my menu tab. And on line 7, I can add some basic Twig that says if this menu tab title is Twig. Then on line 8, I'm going to build a string that has that background and text color. And on line 9, I'm going to print out, using the link Twig function, the item, adding alt to the end of the title as the first argument, passing the URL, and then adding an attribute as the third argument. And if Twig is in the title name, then it'll just print out the link as the Twig template is doing. So before I can use this, I have to enable my custom module. So I go back to the Drupal admin, go to appearance, I see my custom theme is available. All right, I set it as default so Drupal will use it. And now, when I go to my page and Drupal goes to render the main menu, it's going to know that it's using my theme. It's going to look for a template called menu-main. It's going to find my version. It's going to render this main menu, looping through the logic, hitting my custom Twig, which will alter that Twig menu title, menu link to add the word alt to the end and change the styling. Right? I didn't really have to know too much about Drupal. I had to create a theme and add a template file, but I didn't have to do any Drupal work really. Pretty cool. Now, if I want to know if I want to change the display, but I don't want to work in a template, I can use CSS. And Drupal is flexible enough to let me alter the CSS to meet my needs. And I like to think of this as the alter display method, because you are altering the display of items to the page. You're not changing their values or anything. With School CSS, you can target any element on the page, pages in quotes, so anything that's output and markup, you can alter and target. You need to know CSS to use CSS, or think you know CSS like I do. And you have to know in Drupal how to add it to a library, and I'll talk about what a library is in a second. And to add custom CSS to a page, and to add a library to a page, you have to have a custom theme or a custom module. So in our demo, still a front-end developer, I'm more CSS oriented. We already have our custom theme, so I want to alter a menu tab using nothing but CSS. So to my Flex theme, I add a CSS directory with a CSS file, and then I add a libraries.yaml file, which I will use to tell Drupal 8 about my library. So a quick look at the CSS, it's very basic. I'm targeting the main menu class, inside that the menu class, inside that any list item, the fifth list item, and any A tag in there, I'm setting the background color and the text color. Now my libraries.yaml file, this is a configuration file in Drupal 8. Again, it can be on themes or modules, where you're basically telling Drupal about a collection of files you have that you want to include on some page when this library is called. All libraries have what are known as library asset names, so that's line 1 in this example, which I'm calling my menu alter. And these asset names are unique per project, so per module or per theme. So multiple modules can have the same library asset name, but within one, you can only have one version of it. And then libraries can include 2 types of files, JavaScript or CSS. So this one, we just want CSS. So on line 3, I'm telling Drupal that this library has CSS. And then on line 5, I'm saying where, relative to the root of my project, or the root of my theme, where that CSS file exists. So it's in the CSS directory, and it's in a file called menualter.css. Now just a quick aside, those curly brackets at the end of CSS, I can pass things in there such as like when to include the CSS, like if it's on print or it's on media or it's on all, like I can set those sort of settings in there. So how do I tell Drupal to actually use these files in this library? A number of ways to do that. There are a number of ways to do that in Drupal 8. For a theme, I want this included everywhere. So I go to my theme.info YAML file, which describes to Drupal the definition of my theme, and I can add a libraries argument to it on line 8. And in there, I just list the libraries this theme is dependent on. So it's dependent on my Flex theme menu alter library. Now I can add libraries that are not part of my theme that come from other projects, and I can have dependencies on those and just add them here. Which is really cool if you want to use like a module that provides maybe some additional CSS markup that you want to include. So what happens now, when the page loads, since Drupal is using my custom theme, and it knows to use the theme on this page, it's going to look at my theme info file, look for any libraries it depends on. It's going to find my menu alter library. It's going to go to my libraries.yaml file. It's going to then get the information about what files to include, and include them on the page. The page renders, and it targets my 5th link there, and it changes the background color to blue and the text color to white. Now what you will notice here is that I've changed the display, but all the previous examples, we've added alt to the titles. I couldn't do that with my CSS. I think technically there probably is a way you can do that, but I'm really only able to change the display. I can't change any other aspect about this menu tab. I can't change the location it goes to or the title it has, just placement and color. But maybe if that's all you need to do, that's the skill sets you need. But if you want to do more, but you still want to use like a library like we were doing, you can use JavaScript to make changes. Now with JavaScript, I like to think of it as the DOM manipulation method, because JavaScript gives you the ability to alter any data that is in the DOM, so anything that's presented to the browser. What's great about using JavaScript as your method is you can make changes based on actions. So if a user clicks a button, if an AJAX event occurs, if something's added or removed from the page, you can trigger events off that. The DOM loads or reloads. To do this, though, you need to know JavaScript, and again, how to add files to a library, including a library in Drupal. And JavaScript's dependent on the client browser. Now, these days, it's not really the case that you have to worry about the client's browser being able to use JavaScript. That's pretty much works well. You know, there's still IE out there, but users can turn off JavaScript. So if you're making a change using JavaScript, you have to think about, is this something I don't care that some people may not get this change? And then finally, JavaScript doesn't execute to the page finishes loading. So there's a finite amount of time where the changes you're going to make with JavaScript aren't executed. So the user is going to see technically something you may not want them to. And that's all based off their connection time, their actual physical machine, and how well it can run the JavaScript and how fast it can do it. So those are considerations taken into account using JavaScript. So let's say I want to alter a menu tab using JavaScript. Go back to my theme, because we're going to be adding it to a library. I add just a simple CSS file for this example, and I add a JavaScript directory and a JavaScript file. So I'm going to create something. I know a little bit about Drupal and how it executes commands, and I'm going to create what's known as a Drupal behavior. Who here knows jQuery a little bit? Knows about jQuery? Yeah. All right. So behaviors in Drupal they're kind of anonymous to the .ready event in jQuery. Right. So when the page finishes loading, Drupal's going to run through all the behaviors that are attached to that page and execute them. Or when an AJAX event occurs, it's going to trigger the behaviors as well. So we create a behavior called flex theme menu alter main. And all I'm doing inside that is checking, looping through all the link items on my main menu list. And if on line 6, that link item is pointing to node 5, I'm going to add a class to it called yellow menu. I'm going to add some inline styling, change the text color to black, make it point to a different location. And then on line 10, I'm going to alter the display and add the word alt to the end. So I'm using JavaScript to change not only the display, but the value in what this menu item does. Now, I'm not saving that in the database, so it's only going to happen when this JavaScript executes. Real quick, my CSS file, it adds a definition for yellow menu, which you guessed it, changes the background color to yellow. Now, the libraries.yaml file for Flex theme, libraries is a plural term because it can contain multiple libraries. So I add a new library definition called menu alter main on line 6. And I'm going to list the CSS file it includes, which from line 8 to 10 is my menu alter main.css file. I'm going to list the JavaScript file it includes from lines 11 to 12, which is the main alter menu.js. And then what's cool with libraries is I can list any dependencies I have on other libraries. And again, these don't have to be libraries that are in my theme or in my module or what have you. So since I wrote JavaScript that relies on jQuery, I'm going to make sure that on line 14 it includes the jQuery library. And I wrote JavaScript that is going to use a Drupal behavior, so I make sure to depend on the Drupal core JavaScript library so that that Drupal object's available on the page. In previous versions of Drupal 7 and before, Drupal would basically just add all JavaScript to every page. It was very bloaty. Drupal 8 will only include the JavaScript that you tell it to include on a page. So if there's nothing on the page that says it needs jQuery, Drupal's not going to include jQuery on there. So if you have something you're writing JavaScript and you need to use jQuery, you have to make sure somehow you're listing it as a dependency. So this is my library definition. Now I want to include this library on the page. My previous library, right, from the CSS example, we added it to the info file for the theme. So it includes everywhere. I only want this to be included when the main menu is actually on the page. So you can add libraries using Twig to be included. So I'm going to use the Twig function attach library in line 1 of my menu-s main.html.twig. I'm going to pass the name of my library. So what this means is that library will only be included when this template file is being used. So if I change the theme, this library is not going to be included. If I set conditions on my main menu block so that it only displays on certain pages, this library won't be included because I don't want it included on those pages. So now what happens? The page loads. Drupal goes to render the main menu, uses my template. My template tells Drupal to use a library. Drupal goes to my library definition, my library.yaml file, finds the CSS and JavaScript files it includes, finds the dependencies it has, gets those files from those libraries, adds them all to the page. The page loads. This is a mouthful. After the page loads, my JavaScript executes, loops through all the main menu items, finds the one that points to node 6, alters the title, alters the display, sets a CSS class, which then changes how it looks. But again, it did all that, and I didn't really know too much Drupal. I knew how to write a library, and I knew how to write my JavaScript. I didn't have to know any real Drupalisms. All right, let's transition now that I am a Drupalist, or someone who works as a backend developer, so I know PHP and stuff. So I want to alter menu tabs using my specialties and what I'm good at. I'm not good at JavaScript, and I'm not good at CSS. So I'm going to use hooks. Hooks is a very valid method for changing data in Drupal and making it do what you want. Hooks are the alter data method. Hooks are specially named functions in Drupal. They've been around forever, which are provided by both Drupal core and plenty of Drupal modules provide their own hooks. And what they allow you to do is, at certain times when data is being retrieved or sent to the database or being sent to be templated, you can hook into that, interrupt that process, alter the data before sending it on its way. Now, to use hooks, you need to know how to write PHP, and you need to know a bit about Drupal and like what hooks to use and where hooks are executed and how to find them. There's a lot of documentation online how to do that, but that's something you need to know if you're going to attempt to change stuff using hooks. And using hooks require a custom theme or a custom module. In a custom theme, you would be in the .theme file. You're going to put like preprocess and template hooks, and in your module, you're going to put it in the .module file. And that's pretty much usually what should only go in your module file is implementations of hooks. So I'm a Drupal developer now. I want to change a menu tab using hooks. A good place for me to start is having that Twig debug still enabled. I can inspect my element. And so before we were looking at the templating information, but on line 2 it also tells me some information about the hooks that will be hit for theming this item. So what name to use to grab that data before it gets templated. So I'm going to use what's called a preprocess hook. And I'm going to do so in a module. I'm a developer. I like building modules. So my module's custom directory, I'm going to create the Flex module. I'll have an info.yaml file, which basically tells Drupal this is a module. And I have my .module file. And my .module file contains a preprocess hook. So I name it Flex module, the name of my module, the word preprocess, and then the hook name, which the Twig ebook told me was menu__main. So this gets a list of variables. I'm going to loop through all the items in it. And then for each one on line 6, I'm going to check the URL to see if it's pointing to node 6. If it is, then I'm going to add the word alt to the end of the menu tab. The title, I'm going to grab the attributes attached to the menu item. I'm going to change the styling to change the background color and the text color, and I'm going to save it. Drupal will send it on its way to be templated and output using Twig and all that jazz. So now I have to enable this module. So when we enabled the contrib module we used earlier, we used the core UI. I'm going to use something called drush, which is a command line interface for Drupal. So I'm just going to say drush, enable, and the name of my module, Flex module. Yes, I want to enable it, confirm that. Great, my module is enabled. So now what happens is Drupal goes to build this page. It retrieves data from the database about what goes in the main menu. It's going to send that to be templated. Before it gets to be templated, it's going to go through the preprocess hooks, which is going to hit my module's hook because it's been enabled. My module is going to loop through the logic, add some styling, change some values, sending off to be templated. Technically, it's going to be templated in my custom template using my theme, and output on the page. And now the hooks tab has the word alt at the end, white text, and the red background. So I alter that using PHP, but I got the same effect as if I was using JavaScript, right? It looks the same endpoint, just a different skill set. Now, if I wanted to do something a little more robust, and this is going to get ridiculous, and I didn't want to use hooks, but I wanted to take control over how menus just work in Drupal in general. In Drupal 8, I can use what's known as a service. Services are the replace core method. It's the replace core method. So in previous versions of Drupal, if you wanted to change how some of the core functionality of Drupal works, you had to do what's known as hack core. And now I say that there's only the right for me way, there's no right way. There's definitely a wrong way to do something in Drupal, and that's hacking core. With Drupal 8, you don't have to do that because you can tell Drupal, instead of using your menu class, use mine. So examples of services, they are global systems. So like the database, what the functionality that controls access to the database is a service. That controls sending and sending emails, that's a service. System that controls building and retrieving menu items and building menu trees, that's a service. And we can tell Drupal, thanks to the introduction of Symfony, to use our code to use that service instead of the core code provided. Now, of course, this requires advanced Drupal knowledge and advanced object-oriented programming skill sets to write a class to take control of functionality correctly. If you don't know what you're doing, you have a chance of really breaking a lot of your system. But if you know what you're doing, you take absolute control over Drupal. Now, adding services requires a custom module. You have to place it in a module. You can't do it in a theme. You can't just add it as code somewhere. I mean, you might be able to use a Symfony plugin, I'm not sure, but you have to use a custom module to tell Drupal, use my PHP instead of yours. So we have our Flex module, and I'm going to put in a source directory. And so to override a service, you need at least two files. You need a service provider, which you're going to use to tell Drupal, this is my PHP class, and I want it to use in this example, in these scenarios. And then you need at least one class file that has that code in it. So for our menu tree, I want to overwrite what Drupal is using to output and build menus. So I'm going to, my service provider class, I'm going to call the alter method. I'm going to get the definition for the main, for the menu link tree class and replace it with my class that I defined in my other file. Now in my class, I just extend the core one that Drupal has because I don't want to overwrite everything Drupal is doing, and I overwrite the build method, which is in charge of building the menu tree. And I learned this after a lot of trial and error of figuring out what handles this. So on line 7, I'm just going to call Drupal core and have Drupal build it, and then I'm going to alter those items. So first on line 8, I'm going to check if this menu actually has items in it, and if it's going to be themed as the main menu. So the problem with overwriting a whole service for just changing one menu tab in the main menu is I am overwriting the service for all menus in Drupal. So I'm really hijacking this global system for a very specific use case. Probably not the best that I do that, but it's a valid method to do so. So in my main menu, I do loop through all the items. And this looks a lot like what I did with the hook previously. So I'm just going to look for one that is the last or the 8th menu item. I'm going to set the add alt to the title and add some CSS styling inline to the URL. So now when Drupal goes to build this page, it goes to call the menu link tree service to build the menu, and it's going to use my version of it, which is going to call the core one to get all the menu items. It's going to alter them when it goes to build the array. I'm going to change that menu item, send it off to be templated and hooked into and templated and output. And now we see the services alt, the second to last tab there, has the word alt at the end, and it's orange. Right? I've changed it by overriding a whole core system of Drupal in a valid way. So my site's still upgradable and still can receive security updates. All right, so the last method I want to talk about is combinations. And this is not a specific Drupal method. This is using all the different methods I talked about. And it's the real world scenario. You're going to be using a combination of skill sets probably to make your changes. And that's why you have a team of developers, people who specialize in certain items. So it gives you the most control of Drupal because you can use different methods in the most appropriate ways. Use multiple skill sets. But this requires the most time and effort, right? You have to be able to have the skills or the people available who know these individual components and how they work together. So let's change the menu tab with the last couple of minutes that I have using the previous 7 methods in conjunction. So altogether, change some stupid menu tab. This is going to be interesting. So I have my menu link tree service that I'm looping through the main menu items. And I'm going to check to see if it's pointing to node, a menu item is pointing to node 8. I'm going to alter the title of my service, add the word alt. I'm going to go to my hook in my module. And I'm going to, again, loop through the menu items. And for each one, I'm going to add a new attribute called isCombo. And I'm just going to set that as a Boolean value if it's the last item or not. Then I'm going to go to my JavaScript function that gets executed. And I'm going to check if there's a data attribute called combo. And if that's true, I'm going to add a class to it. I'm going to write some crazy CSS to target any link item that has combo.item. I didn't write the CSS. I copied it from somewhere, so I don't. You'll see. And then I have my custom template, which I'm going to check if a menu item has isCombo as an attribute when it's being built. I'm going to reverse the title using a twig filter so it prints out backwards. I'm going to go back to our contrib module, the menu attributes, and I'm going to add a new new attribute called data combo. I'm going to make it optionable that you can select yes or no for every menu item. I'm going to use Drupal core to go in and edit my last menu item. And in the attributes section, I now have an attribute that says combo item, and I'm going to select yes for this one and save that. So now, and I'm not going to loop through the whole spiel, but every single piece of those gets triggered in the right way, adds an option or changes the menu tab in some way, and we get this crazy backwards combo alt rainbow menu tab that you should all be using on every website. All right, I got 1 minute, and I'll finish up in 1 minute because I'm going to beat everybody here to lunch. Okay, so what? All right, so what did we learn today? I hope we learned that Drupal is flexible. That no matter what your skill is, no matter what you have available, what time or budget you have, you can make Drupal do what you want in the way you want it to. So there's no right way to do something, there's just the right for me way. I have some resources here. They're bit.ly links. I also have this presentation on my the node page on the conference website, so you can get to this. But I have this presentation, these annotated slides, all my demo code that I wrote, so the demo theme and the demo module, if you want to take a look at that. And then I have my blog where I talk about Drupal-y things usually that you can check out. And finally, if you have any feedback for me for this presentation, greatly appreciate it. Always work in progress for me. And I want to thank you guys, and I will stick around for questions if people have questions, and we can mosey over to lunch together. So that's what I got. Any questions? I'm that good of a presenter.
So services are just for overriding Drupal core, right? That's like the sole
Yep.
case. What's the common? Do you use that often in your work?
Yeah.
What's the common use case?
So the question was, services are used for core functionality to replace core functionality. What's actually a valid use case, or a real world use case. I would think it's early to tell. There's not been a lot, but like say if you wanted to adopt a new database system that came out that Drupal doesn't support, like maybe there's like, what is there? There's, instead of MariaDB, say there's MariaDB, right? You could write a service for the database layer that then you could have a module that says, hey, use this module if you want to use MariaDB, and it replaces those service calls. So no one has to rewrite all their custom code or the other core code that calls databases. They can use that abstraction level and you're replacing the endpoint. So stuff like that, yeah. Or if you want to swap out a mail system to use like a stub when you're developing, you don't want to actually send emails, you want to log to a file, you can overwrite the service that way. Something like that.
You just download the module.
Yeah. Question?
Yeah, but services, so you also mentioned about dependency injection. Also one main purpose of using services.
Yeah, one of the main purposes of using services is dependency injection, and so that you can pass, when you're writing classes or methods, you can specifically say, this attribute is of this type of object. So like it's a mail object that uses that service or that class. It's definitely a valid thing to do. And a very powerful part of services. Great.
Nice.
All right. Thank you.